Danny Segura for MMA Junkie. I'm here with Eric Nicksick. You all know this guy. I mean, he's the coach to the stars, and we got some big news. The big man, Francis Ngannou, is returning in October against Renan Ferreira in mixed martial arts under the PFL banner. So very exciting news. And obviously here at MMA Junkie, we bring you the most important interviews. So I was like, yo, we got to talk to Eric Nicksick. Obviously, he's going to be leading his return. Eric, first of all, how happy are you that we got the big man back?
Yeah, man, I'm happy for him, and just like we talked about quite a bit, just with the passing of his son, just to keep his mind occupied and get him focused on his fighting career. I wasn't sure if he was ever going to fight again. Like just that type of tragedy, that type of loss, you just never know how somebody's going to rebound. But getting him back in the room and getting him back in the gym, I think kind of reinvigorated those MMA juices again, and he wanted to fight. So I'm happy for him, man, and he just seems like he's in a good place right now.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up. Obviously, like terrible news, and I hope that Francis Ngannou is doing well as well as his family. But from what you mentioned, like his sort of MMA training has kind of helped him out in coming back and sort of dealing with that the best you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, just being around the boys, being around the
Yeah.
team, and keeping him busy, keeping his mind occupied. I think that was the main focus for all of us was to get him back in the room and just try to help him heal. That was really it. And if in that time, in that process, he felt comfortable that he wanted to fight again, then so be it. But really, for us, it was just more about the psyche and getting our friend back and
Yeah.
taking care of him.
Yeah. As a coach, obviously as a friend of Francis as well, like you feel comfortable with him getting back in the cage, especially after this happened. Like you feel like his psyche, you feel him mentally strong, and you feel like his mind is at the right place.
Yeah, man, we're talking about the most resilient person
Yeah.
I've ever met, and this is just something I think that for whatever reason, God, fate, the universe just puts these hurdles in front of this man, and we've seen what he's capable of doing. So I'm just honored to be by his side. He's my friend first and foremost. I know at the end of the day, I'm his coach, but we're brothers. We're brothers in arms, and I know what he's fighting for, and I know his purpose right now, and I'm here to help him accomplish that goal.
Yeah, for sure. And as you mentioned there, like you almost had like some worries that he may never come back. Not only, obviously everything that went down with his son, that's terrible news, but also in his boxing career, I'm sure he made a lot of money, right? He fought twice, two of the biggest heavyweights today in boxing with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. So I don't really know how much he's making, but I would assume he's pretty set at this point in time. Did you ever have doubts that he was going to return to MMA?
No, not necessarily, and I think that like once you know and understand what makes Francis tick, it's not about the money. Obviously,
Yeah.
the money is a byproduct of winning and doing well, but he's a competitor, and I think that once you really know who and what Francis is, it was never like, oh, let me come back and make some more money. This is what I want to do this for. It was, I still don't think I've scratched the surface of my full potential within MMA. So that's, I think, what drew him back was the competitiveness to him. And, when we were fighting Cyril Gahn, we were, I think that's when we were really starting to put things together. And then he
Yeah.
had the knee injury, but, it was the best I've ever seen him. And then, he got back after the knee injury, and we started working maybe at possibly fighting John Jones. We weren't sure, but we were working hard and staying in the lab. And I think that's when he kind of understood, like, man, I still have a lot of potential, a lot of things left I could do in this sport. So that's where I think that's where this focus is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And selfishly, as an MMA fan, like I was happy for him to go get that bag, do his thing in boxing. I mean, he had a very competitive fight with Tyson Fury and all that, but my thing's MMA, right? So I want to see him fighting MMA. So this is good news that we got him back. I guess how much MMA training has he done since he left the UFC? Because obviously, I'm sure boxing took a lot of his time. But did you guys just start MMA training, or has he been training MMA all along?
He's been training all along. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, like anytime he's in Vegas and he's in the gym, he's wrestling. I mean, we say MMA training. Let's just say what it is. I mean, he's wrestling. He's grappling. He's taking guys down, and he's working everything. So, Even when we had the Tyson Fury fight when he was in Vegas, he would come and spar, and he was doing MMA sparring in between. And so from like all the way back from like April to July until the fight was announced, he was in the room, and he was kind of a sparring partner for a lot of the guys, for Burgoy and Sergey and everybody else that's in the room that's a heavyweight, Tim Johnson. So he was kind of, flipped the role as more of a sparring partner, but he was still working on everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great news. It's good to hear. And he's obviously, as I mentioned, returning in October against Renan Ferreira. This is a big fight, right? Renan Ferreira is a 2023 PFL champion. I mean, he's done quite well in the organization, and I feel like fresh off his UFC departure, right? The topic was John Jones or Francis Ngannou. Who's the best heavyweight on the planet? We don't have the answer to that. And maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this is not fair to Francis, but I feel like as the time has gone by, obviously his inactivity within MMA has kind of hurt him on sort of that stake. And as well as Tom Aspinall has been doing quite well, right? Going up the ranks. So it's always been like, at this point it's been, who's the best heavyweight, Aspinall or John Jones? Do you feel like in his return, it's going to be like y'all must have forgot type thing? Do you feel like Francis can reinsert himself back into that question, and all of a sudden, we are wondering really who is the best heavyweight in the world among 3 fighters now?
Sure, it definitely brings that question back up to notion. And here's the thing with MMA, as you and I know, like the news cycle is always circulating. There's a new fight every week. There's a new headliner. So you could dominate the headlines for a week, and then the following week there might be somebody else that takes over those headlines. So MMA is very much an out of sight, out of mind sort of I don't know, just program, if you will. So for us, I mean, you go in there and you go and win this fight in dominating fashion. Of course, it puts them right back into that MMA mainstream, headliner. But this is a very dangerous opponent. We've been watching him for a long time. Fast, long, big, tall, powerful guy. So, we got our work cut out for us. But I think if Francis go in there, do what he's capable of, yeah, it definitely puts us right back in that mix.
Obviously, you're his coach and his friend, but you see him as the best heavyweight on the planet, right? Still.
Yeah, so of course. I just feel like for us, there's so many things that we have done in the past in the room that we've worked on that he hasn't really been able to show to his full potential. I mean, we're talking about a guy who beat Cyril Gane on one leg, right? Like what he's capable of doing when he's healthy, it's just different. It really is just different. And we saw pieces of that when he even fought Tyson Fury. This guy's a competitor, and he raises his level every time out. And I mean, we're I can't say anything else. We have to prove it. Don't tell me, show me. So I can sit here and talk about it all day long, but I know what he's capable of. And October 19th, we need to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. And I gotta ask you this, because there's been so much emphasis on the boxing, right, in the last couple of years with him having those boxing fights. We've seen some fighters really benefit from like just focusing on one specific art. Do you feel like we're almost going to get an improved version just because he really got the time to just really focus on his hands? I know you mentioned he was doing MMA training, but I mean, I would assume we should expect a better striker in there, right?
Yeah, I would say you expect a better striker, but a more efficient striker. A guy who understands his distance and range, his speed. The one thing that I noticed that he's really improved on is his counters are built into his defense a lot better. So if he's rolling with a punch or catching a punch or slipping or parrying, the counter's built in right there. So he's not, there's no hiccup between the slip and then like, oh, now I'll counter. It's like boom, counter, right? So he's been really good at doing that, where I think that's where boxers are so efficient. And I think he's starting to catch on to that when it comes to the boxing element. Now we can bring that over to MMA, and I think it's only going to be better for him.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I'm so excited for his return. I was bummed to see him again go to the boxing world again. Props to Ngannou, he got paid. He did big fights, very competitive fights as well, especially the one with Fury. But MMA is their thing, so glad to see him back. And I gotta ask you, you mentioned a little bit about Renan Ferreira. A lot of people may not know him. He might not be like the biggest name, but he's up there. I feel like he's among the best heavyweights on the planet. He's got a PFL championship to back that up. The guy is like, what, 6'7"? He's huge, heavy hitter. From what you've seen so far from him, give us sort of a scouting report. What do you make of him, and what are the things to watch out here?
Speed and very good basics, right? Like, and I don't mean that to be rude. Like he wins fights off a jab cross and pull counters and just super sharp basics. But you talk about the heavyweight division where you're looking at 4-ounce gloves, and a guy that size and that stature, he touches you with one strike, one hand, he could put you out, put your lights out. We saw that with Ryan Bader, who's an accomplished heavyweight. Although he's a 205er by nature, but he's a competitor at heavyweight as well. And then just a guy that I think that's only going to get better in Renan Ferreira. So we got to work it out for us, man. And I'm excited for the challenge.
Yeah, that's going to be a great fight. And when I last interviewed you, fresh off the Francis Ngannou leaving the UFC news, you mentioned how like your dream fight was still, all respect to PFL, right? But like your dream fight, and I think everyone can agree with this, was or I don't know if it still is, Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. Is that still the case? Is that sort of your crown jewel?
It has to be. I mean, it has to be. Like, how can you be in this position and not want to try to fight the best to ever do it, right? And again, like I've said this time and time again, I think Jon is the best to ever do it. And if you're a competitor, why? How do you not want to try to compete against arguably the best to ever do it? Mm-hmm. And that is, yes, you want to game plan, you want to compete, you want to try to put your best camp forward and your best fighter, and that's obviously Francis. And yeah, man, that's definitely something I would still love to have that opportunity to be able to do.
Yeah. We've seen some crazy shit, right? Like Dan Ige right there in your background. He fought on like 4 hours notice, right? Yeah. We've seen some crazy unexpected stuff. But like, it would be cross promotional if it ever happens. Which is not something we see much with the UFC. But do you feel like it ever happens? Like, do you have a gut feeling? Do you feel like that's sort of a fantasy fight, or do you feel like, I don't know, it's two big names, heavyweights. If Jones wins, Ngannou wins, that might be the biggest fight to make in the sport.
I mean, I'm very optimistic when it comes to these things, and I think money talks, and you get the right people behind you. Obviously, we have a good relationship with Saudi, and I know Dana and UFC are working very well with Saudi. So money talks, man. And no disrespect to Dana, but he has a boss as well. So somebody tells, hey man, this is a lot of money. We're taking this. Set your ego aside. I think Dana is in a position to where he wants to make the best fights, and he's not going to let his ego or any past history take advantage of that. And if he feels Jon Jones is the best to ever do it, then absolutely put your best guy forward and give us the opportunity to see if we can dethrone that man.
Yeah, man. I take out every year with say like 23 fights on my wish list for 2023. I did that for 2024. I do that on MMA Junkie, and the top one for this year was Ngannou versus Jon Jones. I think that's going to remain there until both guys retire. So we'll see, or either guy retires. But definitely that's a fight I want to watch so bad. And I got to ask you this. I know you don't speak for Francis Ngannou. We haven't spoken to him. He is returning, but is this a prolonged return? Is he back in MMA, or is he going to dabble back into boxing? I don't know if you've gotten a chance to speak to him in terms of like what his future plans are.
I mean, that's the best part about the position that he's in. He goes to the highest bidder or whatever he wants to do in that moment, So he's in a great spot with the PFL. He's in a great spot with Saudi. I know that, like, again, yes, the money would be better for him to fight in boxing, but that wasn't what it was about. I think whatever kind of moves him, he'll take that opportunity. And he's had a great relationship with the PFL. In a lot of ways, I feel like he wanted to honor that fight and get this fight in because of how well PFL has treated him and how patient PFL has been. They've supported him all the way through this. So, we'll see what he decides to do after. I think probably he's got at least another, 3 or 4 fights in him, and maybe it's 2 MMA, 2 in boxing, something like that. And we'll see what he ends up wanting to do after that.
Yeah. I think I speak for the MMA community. Maybe if you can, just persuade him a little bit, 3 MMA, 1 boxing, maybe you can work your magic there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, me, bro. It works out better for me if it's MMA.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be happier for him, and he's made some great decisions for his career. And whatever he decides, I got his back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Eric. Well, a pleasure talking to you always, man. Thanks for the great insight. Looking forward to Francis Ngannou's return, as well as the stable of fighters that you guys have. We can do an entire podcast here, 2-hour podcast speaking about all the fighters that you're working with. But yeah, we just had to talk about Francis Ngannou. Big news, obviously, October 19th, Renan Ferreira, PFL. The big man is back. So thanks again, and best of luck in this training camp.
My pleasure, Danny. Thanks for having me on, man. Give my boy Tom Aspinall a shot at John. That poor guy.
Hey, real quick, before you go, in the UFC, I'm not talking about MMA in general. In the UFC, who's the best heavyweight right now?
It's Aspinall.
Yeah,
it's Aspinall. I mean, I don't know. You have to say it's Tom, just because of he's been doing it. He's been fighting. He's been winning at a high level. I have to say it's Tom. I know I'm a little biased. I'm friends with him. I work with him here and there. We talk a lot. Yeah, I just got to say it's Tom, man, to be honest.
Yeah. You know how the heavyweight division in boxing has been sort of playing out, right? With Wilder, Joshua, Fury, Usyk, like they're kind of all fighting each other, right? It's like that generation. Somehow, I mean, I pray to the MMA gods. Somehow Aspinall, Jones, I guess Stipe is going to fight Jones, Ngannou, they all got to fight each other at some point. I don't know how it's going to happen, but, that's the beauty of boxing, right? Like those fights usually happen maybe a little bit too late, but they happen. Something's got to happen there, like a tournament. I want to see all those guys fight each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're in Aspinall's shoes because you're kind of being held hostage in a lot of ways, and you're waiting on this to be decided, and there's no real end in sight. And we dealt with that for years when it came to Stipe. We dealt with that. We were waiting for Stipe, and DC and all this. Like, dude, can you guys figure this out so we can get our opportunity to fight?
Yeah.
One of you guys. And, all love to Stipe. I mean, he's a friend. I love him to death. He hasn't fought since he's fought in Francis. So what makes us feel like Stipe is going to even come back? And how's he going to look after 4 year? How's it long? I mean, I don't know how long he's been out, right?
Since it was one of the first fights of the pandemic, right? That was at the Apex.
Yeah, man. So it's been a long time. It's been a long time. So, we got these guys now at the heavyweight division that are absolute killers that deserve that opportunity to, hoist that belt. And I know Tom is the interim, but what does that mean? Like, we're just going to hold this belt hostage, so give this guy the opportunity to fight, man.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Hopefully we see that fight as well at some point in time. All right, Eric. Well, now we're going to do the real outro here. So thanks again, man. And best of luck with this training camp for October 19th.
All right, Danny. Good talking to you, brother.